Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be making a cinnamon raisin and chocolate chip naan or bread. For this recipe you're going to get about 6 loaves, so you're going to get 3 loaves of the cinnamon raisin and 3 loaves of the chocolate chip. To start with the cinnamon raisin bread you're going to need 3.5 cups of flour, a half a cup of raisins, 2 tablespoons of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, a quarter cup of oil, 1.5 cups of water, and 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast. So you're going to pour half a cup of your warm water into the bowl and add your 2 teaspoons of yeast. You need the water to be warm so that the yeast can activate and you'll know that it's alive. After you can add in your oil, salt, sugar, and cinnamon at this point, and then mix those. If you're not sure that your yeast is alive, you can let this mixture rest for about 5 minutes, and if it's not producing any bubbles or anything like that, then you'll know that you'll have to restart the recipe with fresher yeast. Here you can add in your half a cup of raisins, or you can save those to add in at the end. We recommend adding them in right now just because it helps to disperse them evenly throughout the dough once you actually add in your flour, which we're doing here. And here you're going to alternate between your 1 cup of water and the 3 cups of flour. This is because you don't want the dough to get too dry at once, and you also don't want it to get too wet at once either. So we're just going to alternate between the wet and the dry, continuing to mix and knead the dough. And after you have completely added in all of your flour and water, you're just going to keep kneading the dough for about another 5 to 10 minutes, or until it's completely smooth and you can set it to rest. After it's ready to rest, you're going to just oil the top of the dough and also the sides of the bowl. That's just to make sure that it doesn't stick once it's rising. And then you can wrap it with the plastic wrap. You can put it on top of the bowl or on top of the dough, doesn't really matter. You're also going to put a towel or 2 of them on top. That's just to make sure that the dough is staying warm. If it's too cold, then the yeast won't rise very fast and it'll just take a longer time to rise. So you're going to let that rise for about 45 to 55 minutes or until it's doubled in size. So for our chocolate chip dough, we're actually going to need to add in an egg to the previous recipe. So here we have an egg, a teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of sugar, quarter cup of oil, 1.5 cups of warm water, and the 3.5 cups of flour. First, you're going to mix your egg, the quarter cup of oil, the teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of sugar, and as well as your 2 teaspoons of yeast first, just to get it all mixed together. And then we're going to add in half a cup of our warm water, just the same as last time. Again, if you're not sure if your yeast is alive, you can let it rest for about 5 to 10 minutes just to make sure that there's bubbling going on and you know that it's alive. You can break up the yolk with your hand, or just make sure that the mixture is not separate and that it's completely combined. So you're going to do the same thing with your wet and dry ingredients by alternating, just to make sure that there's not too much flour or too much liquid in the bowl at the same time, as well as avoiding drying out your flour and making your dough too wet. And then again, after you've added in all of your water and flour, you're just going to keep kneading for another 5 to 10 minutes until the dough is smooth and the sides of the bowl are clean. After that, you're going to let it rise for about 45 to 55 minutes in a warm spot. Make sure to cover it with a little bit of oil, as well as put it into an oiled bowl so that when it does rise, it doesn't really stick to anything. Then you're going to cover it with plastic wrap and a towel, and we set ours in the oven with the oven off because that's just a good spot for the yeast to stay warm. And then after your dough has risen, for the cinnamon raisin one, we're going to actually separate it into a few different rolls. You can use a little bit of the flour on the table just to help you shape the dough into a bit of a circle. That's going to help with the shape of the bread at the end when we actually form it to place it on the baking sheet. So after you have shaped all of your dough, we got about 3 of them. You can actually make bigger sized loaves if you'd like. We recommend doing that. We couldn't do it though because our baking sheets are not really that big. So we got 3 loaves. You might get more or less depending on how big you make them. And after you let them rest for about 15 to 20 minutes covered with that towel, you're gonna press them out into a circle shape, and then use your hands just to shape it into the traditional naan shape, which is like an oval with the one end pointed. And then you can use a little bit of water and your hands just to like put a little pattern into the bread. It's gonna make it look better once you have it out of the oven, and it'll give it a bit more of a natural look. So you're just gonna do the same process repeating with your other loaves of bread, and once they come out, the top should be pretty brown. For the cinnamon raisin, you just want to make sure that you're looking at the bottom of the dough as well, so that it's not too burnt. For the chocolate chip bread, we added in the half cup of chocolate chips at the end. You could also add it in with the yeast at the start like we did with the raisins. Again, we do recommend doing that because it helps to disperse the chocolate chips throughout the entirety of the dough. So then the same thing we did here with the dough, we got it into 3 different rolls and then covered it for another 15 to 20 minutes just to make sure that they're fully rested. After that, we pressed them out into the circle shape, and then again used our hands just to make it into that oval and pointed one end. You can also here add chocolate chips on the top if you feel that there's not enough in the bread like we did. And at this point you can also add egg wash if you'd like. We chose not to because we prefer the natural looking color of the bread, but the egg wash will help it brown a little bit and have a nicer golden color if it comes out of the oven. For the chocolate chip bread, you're not going to let it go as long as the cinnamon raisin. It's going to be about 15 to 20 minutes at a 450 degree oven. For this one, you're just going to want to look for the topping a little bit golden. If you go farther than that, the bottom might burn because this bread just cooked a little bit faster than the raisin. And then that's it for this recipe. Thanks for watching, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe.